All right, so get ready because we're diving into a story that's like a total social media explosion.
Oh, yeah, this one's got it all.
Yeah, accusations and breakups and just a whole lot of drama online. Are you ready for this?
I am absolutely. These are always so interesting. It's really amazing how fast personal stuff becomes like everyone's business online now.
Seriously. So we're going to be looking at pro basketball player LiAngelo Ball, his ex Nikki Mudarris, who you might know from reality TV, and the woman LiAngelo is with, now Rashida Nicole. I bet you know the basics already, but get ready because things get messy. Our source for this whole thing is this article online, and let me tell you, it is wild.
What's really interesting here is it's not just like one person's word against another. It's a whole bunch of accusations, and there could even be legal stuff.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how social media makes these personal fights so much bigger.
Exactly. So let's start with Nikki Mudarris. She went straight to social media and didn't hold back at all. She's saying that LiAngelo walked out on her and their two little kids, Lavello, who's 1, and baby Lanaya, who's only 2 months old. She even posted this quote, "He decided to walk out on his kids and me." I mean, those are some serious words. You can just feel how hurt she is.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful statement.
Mm-hmm.
It really shows how emotional these situations can be. It's easy to get caught up in the gossip, but we got to remember there are real people involved, and their lives are being turned upside down by this whole public drama.
I totally agree. And to make things even crazier, Mudarris is also saying that LiAngelo had a kid with someone else while they were together for those 3.5 years. If that's true, things could get really serious legally, especially when it comes to child support. And who gets the kids?
It's crazy to think how different this might all be if social media wasn't around. I mean, in the past, stuff like this would have been handled more privately, but now everything gets blown up, and everyone online is talking about it.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like social media is the new courtroom and everyone online is the jury.
And that can be kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
People are so quick to judge based on just a little bit of information, and all the details get lost in all the chaos.
Okay, so we've got heartbreak, infidelity, and everyone's talking about LiAngelo Ball. But here's where the story takes another turn. Enter Rashida Nicole, the woman LiAngelo is with now. It looks like their relationship was confirmed with that classic move, a selfie on Instagram.
It really makes you think, huh, is it just a picture or is it something more? Like maybe she's trying to stir things up? We've seen celebrities use social media like this before to control the story.
That's a good point. And of course, Rashida Nicole's not just sitting quietly. She's fighting back against people calling her a homewrecker. She's saying that LiAngelo had already broken up with Mudarris before they got together. But then she adds another twist. She accuses Mudarris of saying some really racist stuff. Quote, "She always got the N-word in her mouth."
Oh, wow. Now things are getting even more complicated.
Yeah.
This adds a whole other layer to this whole mess. And now we're talking about accusations of racism, which is super serious and could have huge consequences for everyone.
You're so right. This is way more than just relationship drama now. It's about social issues and the power of words, especially when you throw social media into the mix. Think about it. You've got these accusations flying back and forth online, and it's almost impossible to know what to believe or who to support.
It's like a textbook example of how social media can turn a personal fight into something everyone's watching. It's like a modern-day Coliseum where everyone's fighting to prove their version of the truth, and everyone online gets to decide who wins and loses.
Yeah, and the internet loves a good drama, right? People jump to conclusions so fast, often based on incomplete info or their own biases. It's like suddenly everyone's a therapist analyzing every little post and comment.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so risky. It's easy to forget we're talking about real people's lives, and what people say online can have a devastating impact. This isn't just entertainment. It's about reputations, relationships, and even people's mental health.
We see it all the time with famous people. Their personal lives are always being watched, and any little mistake can lead to a wave of hate online.
Oh.
But there's another interesting thing about this story that we haven't talked about yet. Nikki Mudarris. She's got a background in reality TV, and that adds a whole other dimension.
Oh, yeah. That's a great point. It makes you wonder if any of this is even real. Is this genuine, or is it all for attention? It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely something to consider.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Reality TV is all about blurring the lines between real life and what's staged. So you can't help but wonder if this whole thing is being exaggerated for the cameras, maybe even without them realizing it.
And people watching are going to be skeptical, too. They're more likely to question someone who's known for putting their personal life out there, especially if their career is built on drama.
Totally. But even with all that skepticism, there's still a lot of real emotion and pain here. And whether it's real or fake, it's a reminder that famous people are still human, and they deserve to be treated with respect.
I agree completely. Even if some of this feels made up, The feelings and the consequences are very real.
So where does all this leave us?
Ah.
Well, with a ton of unanswered questions and a lot of guessing, will LiAngelo Ball finally speak up and address these accusations? What's the real story behind what Nikki Mudarris is saying, and will there be any legal action?
And what about what Rashida Nicole's saying about the racist comments? Will there be proof, or do people just see it as her trying to make Mudarris look bad? This whole tangled mess of accusations, denials, and social media storms is far from over.
And what makes this even more interesting is that LiAngelo's been totally silent this whole time. He hasn't said anything about any of the accusations, which just makes people even more curious. Why do you think he's staying quiet? Is he doing it on purpose, or is he just overwhelmed by everything?
That's the million-dollar question. And it takes us back to something we talked about before. What responsibility do famous people have to address personal stuff that becomes public knowledge?
Exactly. Especially when you think about how social media has made these situations so much bigger. It's not just gossip magazines anymore. It's global conversations happening all the time, and it's almost impossible to control what people are saying.
It really makes you think about the balance between someone's right to privacy
Yeah.
and the public's right to know. And it's even more complicated when you add in the possibility of fake news and how fast rumors can spread online.
It's a tough situation for sure. But I think it's important to remember that even though these people are famous, they still deserve some level of respect and privacy.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for us, too, as the people reading and watching all of this, to be careful about how we react to these stories.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the drama, but we have to remember there are real people involved, and what we say and do can really affect them.
So as this whole thing with LiAngelo Ball keeps going, and I have a feeling it's not ending anytime soon, let's try to remember that there are real people involved. Let's be aware of what our words and actions can do, and let's try to approach these situations with more empathy and understanding.
I agree. And maybe this whole situation can remind all of us to think critically about what we see online, to question the stories we create in our heads, and to remember that there's usually more to the story than we see at first glance.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, don't you think? We've gone deep into a very public fight, uncovered the complicated world of modern relationships, and explored how social media is changing how we see the world.
Absolutely. And I hope this has given you, the listener, something to think about. This story is just one example of how personal stuff can become a public spectacle in today's digital world. As you come across similar situations online or in real life, remember to approach them with a critical mind, an open mind, and a compassionate heart.
Well said. So what do you think about all of this? What stands out to you, and what questions do you still have? Think about it for a second. We'll be right back after a quick break.
It really does, doesn't it? Like, is she just posting a random photo, or is there more to it?
Right.
Like maybe she wants to make things even more dramatic.
Yeah.
We've seen celebrities do stuff like that before,
Mm-hmm.
Trying to use social media to control how people see things.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, Rashida Nicole isn't keeping quiet about all this. She's saying that people are wrong to call her a homewrecker. She says that LiAngelo and Mudarris had already broken up before she and LiAngelo started dating. But then she throws in this whole other thing. She's accusing Mudarris of saying some really racist stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she even said that Mudarris always has the N-word in her mouth.
Wow. Now things are getting really serious. This adds a whole other layer to an already messy situation. We're not just talking about a love triangle anymore. We're talking about accusations of racism. That's really heavy stuff. It could have serious consequences for everyone involved.
Exactly. This is way beyond just relationship drama now. It's about bigger social issues and how powerful words can be, especially online. With social media, it's like these accusations are just flying back and forth, and it's hard to know what's true or who to believe.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how social media can turn a private fight into a public spectacle. Like a modern-day Colosseum,
Yeah?
back in Roman times,
Yeah.
where gladiators would fight and everyone would watch and cheer.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that. But now it's online.
Yeah.
Everyone's fighting to prove their version of the truth, and everyone online gets to decide who wins and who loses.
Yeah, and you know how much the internet loves drama. People are so quick to judge based on just a few things they see online. They don't even have all the information. Plus, everyone has their own biases. So it's like everyone's suddenly an expert analyzing every little thing people post or comment.
Exactly. And that's where it can get really dangerous. We forget that we're talking about real people with real feelings. And what we say online can have a huge impact on their lives.
Yeah.
This isn't just entertainment for us. It's about real people's reputations, their relationships, their mental health.
We see this happen all the time with celebrities and people in the public eye. Their personal lives are always under a microscope, and any little mistake they make can turn into this huge wave of hate online. But there's something else about this story that's interesting that we haven't really talked about yet. Nikki Mudarris, she's been on reality TV before, and that adds a whole new layer to all of
Oh,
this.
that's a great point. It makes you wonder, is this all real
Right.
or is it fake?
Mm.
Is this genuine emotion or is she just trying to get attention? It's hard to tell for sure, but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, reality TV is all about blurring the lines between what's real and what's made up for the show. So you can't help but wonder if this whole thing is being played up for the cameras. Maybe they're not even aware they're doing it.
And that makes people who are watching even more skeptical. But they're going to question someone who's already known for sharing their personal life online, especially if their career is built on having drama.
For sure. But even with all that skepticism, there's still a lot of real emotion and pain in this situation. Regardless of whether it's real or fake, it reminds us that even famous people are human beings. They have feelings too, and they deserve respect.
I completely agree. Even if parts of this feel staged or exaggerated, the emotions involved are real, and so are the consequences.
Okay, so where does all of this leave us? Well, we have a ton of unanswered questions and a lot of speculation. Will LiAngelo Ball finally speak up and address these accusations? What's the truth behind what Nikki Mudarris is saying, and could this end up in court?
And what about those accusations of racism that Rashida Nicole made? Will there be any evidence to back those up, or will people just see it as her trying to make Mudarris look bad? This whole mess of accusations and denials and social media storms is far from over.
And you know what's even more interesting? LiAngelo has been completely silent this whole time. He hasn't responded to any of the accusations, which just makes everyone even more curious. Why do you think he's staying quiet? Is it a strategy, or is he just totally overwhelmed by all of this?
That's the big question, isn't it? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. How much responsibility do celebrities and public figures have when it comes to addressing their personal issues that become public knowledge?
Right. Especially now with social media, everything is so much bigger. It's not just gossip magazines and tabloids anymore. It's global conversations happening all the time, and it's almost impossible to control the narrative.
It really makes you think about how tricky this is. You know, someone's right to privacy versus the public's right to know. And then you add in the possibility of fake news and how easily rumors can spread online. It's a lot to consider.
It's definitely complicated,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, I think it's important to remember that even though these people are in the public eye, they still deserve respect and some privacy.
Absolutely. And I think we all need to be more careful about how we react to these kinds of stories. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the drama, but we have to remember that real people's lives are being affected by what we say and do online.
So as this whole saga with LiAngelo Ball continues, and I have a feeling there's more to come, let's all try to remember that these are real people with real feelings. Let's think before we speak and act, and let's try to be a little more understanding and compassionate.
I think that's a great point. And maybe this whole situation can be a learning experience for all of us. It can remind us to think critically about what we see online, to not believe everything we read, and to remember that there's usually more to the story than we see on the surface.
You know what? This has been a really interesting deep dive. We've gotten into all the details of a very public fight, explored the complicated world of relationships today, and talked about how social media is changing how we see things.
It has been. And I hope this has given our listeners some things to think about. This story is just one example of how personal stuff can become a public spectacle in our digital world. So if you come across similar situations, whether it's online or in real life, remember to think critically. Keep an open mind and have some compassion.
I love that. Well, it's been great talking about this with you. And to our listeners, we want to know what you think. What stands out to you about this whole situation? What are you curious about? What questions do you have? Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, but I think there's one more thing we need to really look at. It's something we mentioned before, but it's really important. The impact of social media on all of this.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. You can't talk about this whole situation without talking about social media. It's like the main stage for all this drama, and it just makes everything bigger.
It's like everyone's a commentator now, right? Everyone's so quick to give their opinion, to judge, to share their hot takes, and usually they don't even know the whole story. That's what makes it so tricky. We see these little glimpses of people's lives, these perfect pictures and statements, and we start creating stories in our heads. But we're only seeing a tiny part of the whole picture.
And it's easy to forget that there are real people behind those screens, real people who are being affected by what we say and do online.
Imagine this. You know, in the past, this kind of stuff might have stayed private. Maybe it would have been something that happened within a family or a small group of friends, but now it's all out in the open for the whole world to see. And that can be really damaging.
And it's interesting how social media has changed our idea of what's public and what's private. It's like we expect celebrities and public figures to share every little detail of their lives with
It's
us.
true. It's like just because they're famous, we think we have the right to know everything about them. But where's the line? When does being curious turn into being intrusive?
That's a tough question. I don't think there's an easy answer. But I do think we need to be more aware of how we're engaging with these stories. We can choose to be more careful, more empathetic, and more responsible with what we say and do online.
And I think it's important to remember that there's always more than one side to every story. What we see on social media is just a tiny piece of the truth. It's rarely the whole story.
So, as this whole thing with LiAngelo Ball continues, and I have a feeling it's not over yet, let's try to remember that there are real people involved. Let's be aware of how our words and actions can affect others. Let's try to be more understanding and compassionate.
That's a great point. And maybe this whole situation can be a reminder for all of us to think critically about what we see online, to question the stories we create in our heads, and to remember that there's usually more to the story than we see at first.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. We've really gotten into the details of this public feud, explored the complexities of relationships today, and talked about how social media is changing everything.
Absolutely. And I hope our listeners have learned something from this. This story is just one example of how personal issues can turn into public spectacles in today's digital world. So as you encounter similar situations online or offline, remember to approach them with a critical mind, an open mind, and a compassionate heart.
I love that. Well, it's been great exploring this with you. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember to subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes where we'll continue to unpack the most talked about stories and events. We'll see you next time.